Ramadan Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala ashraf al-Anbiya wal Mursaleen. Sayyidina wa Mawlana Abul Qasim al-Mustafa Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. When we read the Holy Quran, in one of the very famous ayahs that introduces Shahr Ramadan to us, Shahr Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. Sometimes you read this verse and I'm sure you've heard it, or sometimes you get emails or flyers, and it has this about Shahr Ramadan, this verse. But it's interesting when you dig into it and you dive into it, you actually come to a conclusion that how does Allah describe Shahr Ramadan? And usually when it comes to us, and most people, for example, to non-Muslims, you want to explain to them, what is Ramadan all about? What is the first thing that you say? You tell them fasting, that you cannot eat or drink, and usually you just make it easier, sunrise to sundown, it's just something like that, even though it's not accurate. But this is what you say about fasting, because that is actually, maybe sometimes it comes to your mind that Shahr Ramadan is mostly about fasting. Not to take away from fasting, fasting has a great reward. And in the narrations it mentions, as-sawmu li. In Hadith al-Qudsi, Allah says, related to Allah, that fasting is for me, wa ana ajzi bih, and I will reward it, wa ana ajzi alay, and I reward upon it. So fasting will be rewarded by God directly, and some of our ulama say, I haven't seen a hadith about any other action that God Himself says, I will reward it myself, fasting. So again, fasting is very good. But Quran mentions Shahr Ramadan alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran. When Allah describes Shahr Ramadan, He says this is the month where the Quran has been revealed. Meaning this is the month of the Holy Quran. So do not just limit Shahr Ramadan to fasting. Think also of that knowledge and inspiration and spirituality that the Holy Quran has. And take this month to recite the Quran, to, as Quran itself says, why don't they ponder about the Quran? Why don't they do tadabbur and think about the Quran? And that is one of the main reasons why I chose to speak about one of the surahs of the Quran, because this is the month of the Holy Quran. So what better topic than to talk about the Holy Quran? Because you have to admit that we have separated ourselves from the Holy Quran. And even its normal recitation, or even thinking about it, and if you ask us about what does this verse mean, what does this ayah say, a lot of us, we do not know. So Quran is an excellent way that if you want to know how God speaks to you, it is God's words. We say, Sadaqallahu al-Aliyyul Azim. God has spoken the truth. So if you want to know how God is, read the Quran. And if you want to know how the prophets of God are and how important prophethood is, then read Surah al-Anbiya. And that is the surah that we're doing. And we're going to have to go a little bit faster tonight because they have tied my hands up. They said that do not speak more than, for example, 30 minutes. So we have to make sure that you have enough time to keep eating and drinking till matla al-fajr. We don't want to take that away from you, the eating and drinking till matla al-fajr. You have that. Just give me 30 minutes of your time and we'll go over some of the Quran. So verse number 4. And we see that the verses before, you tell them the verses before that it was talking about najwa, meaning that the mushrikeen, the polytheists, they were speaking, they were whispering, and they were saying that, this prophet is actually, for example, Quran, let me bring the verses. They said that وَأَسَرُّ النَّجْوَى الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا هَلْ هَذَا إِلَّا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ. They said, he's a human like you. They were doing najwa. Najwa means quiet talk. They're whispering, for example, to one another, private conversation. This person who says he's a prophet, he's just a human being like you. And then it says, and he has brought to you magic. So he's a human, but you know what? He's taking control of everyone because they would read, people would hear the Holy Quran. In every time period, a miracle would come to the people for their own level. And the Quran came as a miracle because people were interested in poetry and balaghat, for example, and eloquence. So then something came where people said, we cannot match. So therefore they said, yes, people are being affected by this Quran, but that's magic. So then in this verse, we understand that قال ربي يعلم القول في السماء والأرض وهو السميع العليم. This is the fourth. If you want to take out your Qur'ans tonight or next time, it's fine, there's no problem. The Prophet said, قال, the Prophet says, my Lord, whatever is said through the heaven and earth, and He is the hearing and knowing, meaning that in this verse we can say that my Lord first of all knows, even that najwa, even that private talk, the Prophet knows. Allah's Prophet says Allah knows. So we have a Lord that knows. 2, that the Prophet's reliance is upon the knowledge of God. قال ربي يعلم القول في السماء والأرض. God knows what is the conversation, what is in through the heaven and the sky. He knows everything. So therefore, this is one of the answers that Quran mentions, that this is one of the beliefs and reliances that the prophets had, is God knows, He sees, He knows what's going on. The next verse, verse 5. بَلْ قَالُوا أَضْغَاثُ أَحْلَامٍ بَلْ افْتَرَاهُ. But they say the revelation is but a mixture of false dreams. Adghath is mixture. Ahlam is dreams. It's a mixture of dreams. So first they're saying he's a human like us. 2, it's witchcraft. Now this is dreams. This Quran that is bringing, they're trying to degrade. And this is some of the statements of the deniers. This is ahlam. These are mixed dreams. Bal al-iftira. Actually, it is invented. It is made up. It's forgery. It's made up. Or 3, bal huwa sha'ir. Oh, he is a poet. And he is very good at poetry. And that is why this is now incomparable to your poetry, because he's a very good poet. Then it says, so he's a sha'ir. فَلْيَأْتِنَا بِآيَةٍ كَمَا أُرْسِلَ الْأَوَّلُونَ. So let him bring us a sign just as the previous messengers were sent with miracles. Bring a sign for us. How the other prophets brought. What did the other prophets bring? What were the miracles of the other prophets? Great, grand miracles, for example. Prophet Isa alayhi salam would give life to the dead. Or for example, when you see Prophet Noah, we'll talk about his lifetime. There was a great flood that happened, flooded everyone, for example. Why doesn't then he bring a big miracle? How come Musa alayhi salam parted the sea? He was a prophet, right? How come all these other grand prophets cured the sick, give life to those that died, split the sea? Why doesn't he bring a miracle for us? So you see, this is the reaction. Quran is actually saying what was in their minds, because Allah knows what's in the skies, what's in the heaven. And the verses continue. Verse 6. مَا آمَنَتْ قَبْلَهُمْ مِنْ قَرْيَةٍ أَهْلَكْنَاهَا أَفَهُمْ يُؤْمِنُونَ. Not a single city which we destroyed believed before them, so will they believe? So now this is the answer in verse number 6, that we have destroyed civilizations that did not believe. And when you look, for example, the lives of the other prophets, you see Prophet Nuh, you see, for example, Prophet Saleh, different prophets. We said Surah al-Anbiya is the stories of the prophets. How many of these cities were destroyed by Allah because they disbelieved? So this now is a threat to them. That listen, basically pay attention. You're saying it's sha'ir. You're saying he's a poet. You're saying it's iftara. You're saying it's made up. You're saying it's ahlam, it's dreams. Be careful. Because if you are going to reject this, remember that we have destroyed other nations, meaning this is the sunnatullah. This is the path of way of Allah. Question that arises is that how come Allah just didn't destroy them right there? How come in those 13 years it took for them to abuse Rasulullah, for them to call him names, to even throw trash at him, to even physically hit him? How come maybe right then and there bala didn't happen? So we look at the life of Prophet Nuh. Prophet Nuh was a prophet at a very older age. And we say he had a grand, long life. And we read about his life, you see that this prophet, about 850 years living with the people. He had a very long life, 850 years. Prophet Nuh alayhi salam, he became a prophet at 850. People already knew him, knew how his characteristics were like. After 850 years, 300 years, at that time he begins to do tabligh and work for the people, sincerely calling them to Allah. And sometimes he was insulted. He would outlive the people because he, for example, was 300 years. He was explaining to them the truth. At that time, the people would tell, don't believe this old man. They would even tell their children, I'm going to pass away. My, for example, advice to you, don't follow na'udhu billah, this crazy person. He's been calling for 300 years. Don't follow him anymore. So there, one of the incidences, Nuh alayhi salam gets, in the stories it says he gets beat up severely. And they beat him up and he's unconscious for 3 days. Imagine, and this is the story of the history of the prophets. They were lied, they were hit, they were harmed, they were killed. And after this beating, now it says, I cannot take it. It's been 300 years. They beat him so bad, he's unconscious. If they want to believe, they would have believed now. They don't have to, beat me up. So now he says, that's it. You're not going to believe. I'm over. You're done. And I think that 300 years is enough time, we would say, that a group of people would want to believe or not. Allah sends 12,000 tribes of angels to Prophet Nuh to change his opinion and to tell him, still maybe there's a chance. Still maybe there's a chance. And he continues his work again. Again, another 300 years ends. And then he says, that's it, it's over. Now it's been 600 years. Maybe if they want to believe 600 years, they would have gotten the point right now. They would have learned. Again, 12,000 angels in hadith comes, and they tell Prophet Nuh, have patience. So what I want to say from this is look at how when you look at the destruction of these groups, for example, you say, why doesn't the bala happen right away? Allah is very patient with the people. And it took 900 years. 900 years of Prophet Nuh to advise the people to live. Then finally Allah accepted, and Jibreel came and gave him 7 pits of dates, and he planted them, and that when these date trees would grow, then we would talk about, or then slowly and slowly the chastisement of the people will come. 900 years. So don't expect that bala and tribulations happen immediately. Allah is very patient with the people, especially people during the time of Prophet Nuh, because their level was different than the level of other people. So therefore we see that when it comes to bala, the bala of Allah is in a way that He gives people. And also Rasulullah was known that they would ask him, why don't you curse the people? And he would say, I'm a rahmatun lil alameen. I do not want to do this. I do not want this bala to happen and calamity to happen on the people. 2, the other instance that I want to talk about tonight is poetry. Because he says, actually they said that Rasulullah is a poet. What is the difference between Quran and poetry? Because we say that very clearly that Quran is not poetry. What is wrong? Why you cannot say Quran is poetry? One, because poetry usually comes from takhayyul, from imagination a lot of times. It's non-fiction, for example. A lot of people, they explain poetry, not always, but they want to explain something. It comes from the imagination. But Quran is about the reality, the haqiqah, or haqiqah. It's about reality. It's not about something in someone's imagination. This is Ayatollah Makaram Shirazi. It gives it differences between Quran and poetry. 1, Quran is about reality. There's no imagination in it. 2, poetry is usually with people's emotions. You're trying to bring about the emotions of people. But Quran is logical. It's not emotional, for example. 3, we say that poetry in a lot of cases exaggerates. And it's known things are okay in poetry. You see some, for example, you can talk about wine, for example, in poetry being mysticism or being spirituality, or you can talk about some of people that are very close to being as if they're God or something. But in poetry, that's allowed, but in reality, in Quran, that is not allowed. You have to speak the truth. So there's no exaggeration in the Quran, for example. 4, poetry is usually bound by linguistics, and the poet is trying to, his main concern is to say it in a way that in terms of linguistics, it has the correct wording. Quran says it has the best balaghat, of course, but the main purpose of Quran is to spread this message and guidance. So therefore we see that there's main differences from this. And now we'll go to the next verse, and we'll go to this was verse 7. So we'll go to the verse 7 now. وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا قَبْلَكَ إِلَّا رِجَالًا نُوحِي إِلَيْهِمْ. And we did not send any apostles before you except as men to whom we revealed. 1, we understand from this verse, Rijal, all the prophets were men. We do not have any prophets that are female. Does it mean that female they're not qualified to reach that high position? Actually, we have one of the holiest of people is Sayyidah Fatima Zahra alayhi salam. She's one of the holiest, but she doesn't have that prophethood, that message that a prophet has. She does not have it. So all of the prophets, according to Quran, it says, وَمَا أَرْسَلْنَا قَبْلَكَ إِلَّا رِجَالًا. And we did not send any apostles for you except as men to whom we revealed. 2, we see that this is mentioned that وَأَفَهُمْ يُؤْمِنُونَ, or this was in the other verse. We see that we have given wahi to them. We have given revelation. Number 2, every prophet has a revelation, a message from God. They never speak from themselves. What they say is what God says, and that is the message. In this last part, that in the last 15 minutes, we'll spend some time. فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of the reminder if you do not know. Who are the people of reminder? Who are Ahlul Dhikr? So it's very interesting when you get into this verse, and one of our great scholars went through the different hadith from Ahlul Sunnah. And I want to read to you the different tafsirs and different hadith that they have. This is, for example, أخرج ثعلبي, a Sunni scholar. في معنى هذه الآية من تفسيره الكبير عن جابر قال لما نزلت هذه الآية قال علي نحن أهل الذكر. Al-Nabi, Sunni scholar, says when this verse came, Ali alayhi salam says, we are Ahlul Dhikr. We are the people of reminder. Or we have, for example, other narrations. And I'm going to read to you the other narrations. We have Qurtubi, Mufassir of Quran, say, قال جابر الجعفي لما نزلت هذه الآية قال علي رضي الله عنه نحن أهل الذكر. We are أهل الذكر. So Quran is very specifically now in this final verse that we're mentioning, the 7th verse, saying, ask the people of the reminder if you do not know. So therefore, who do people ask? In some of the other mufassirin, when mentions dhikr means what? It means Quran. So Ahlul Dhikr means Ahlul Quran. So if you have a question about the Holy Quran, refer to Ali alayhi salam. Refer to Imam Ali. Question. This surah is Makki, right? Surah al-Anbiya is a Makki verse, is surah. Why does Imam Ali alayhi salam, if it refers to him, say Ahlul Dhikr, says that we are Ahlul Dhikr. Fas'alu Ahlul Dhikr. Why did we say we are Ahlul Dhikr, plural? When he is not married yet. This is what some of the Ahlul Sunnah say. If you say he refers to Ali ibn Abi Talib, for example, or some to Ishqal and say, why does he say we? Because he's not married yet. So I am Ahlul Dhikr, we. So one of our dear scholars replies to this and says, because the other Imams also said they are Ahlul Dhikr. And it's very interesting, I'm going to read for you narrations that not only is Ali alayhi salam Ahlul Dhikr, or Imams by Sunni scholars, actually the Imams in the narrations say they are Ahlul Dhikr. Let's read some of these narrations. وقالوا أبو جعفر طبري mentions حدثنا ابن وكيع قال حدثنا ابن إيمان أو يمان عن إسرائيل عن جابر عن أبي جعفر عليه السلام. So the Imam Baghir says فاسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم لا تعلمون قال نحن أهل الذكر. Imam Baghir, according to Tabari, even claims that we are Ahlul Dhikr. So when you say we, because Imam Ali alayhi salam is saying that we as Imams are Ahlul Dhikr. Yes, this surah is Makki. The surah is before he has married Sayyidah Fatima, has Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein, for example. But he's explaining that the Imams are Ahlul Dhikr, they're Ahlul Quran. Interesting, Ibn Kathir then expounds upon this. And if you do not know who Ibn Kathir is, he is one of the scholars that Salafis, Wahhabis, if you ask them one tafsir book that they really respect a lot, they say Tafsir Ibn Kathir. Ibn Kathir mentions here, قال أبي جعفر الباغر. Ibn Kathir quotes from Imam Baghir alayhi salam, نحن أهل الذكر. Again, Ibn Kathir says, Imam Baghir claimed this. We are Ahlul Dhikr, we are Ahlul Quran. Ask us. And that's the meaning that we are the point of reference. You ask in terms of what Quran is saying, ask Ahlul Dhikr. Go and ask them. So what a great, if you think about this narration and think about this verse, what a great manqaba or manaqib of Ahlul Bayt it is that Quran says, go and ask them. Quran, which is the guide, saying, go and, did not say go and ask anyone else. Go and ask Ahlul Dhikr, Ali alayhi salam, Imam Baghir alayhi salam, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Go and ask them. Then he mentions here, very interesting, from Ibn Kathir, about this verse. He says that وَمُرَادُهُ أَنَّ هَذِهِ الْأُمَّةِ أَهْلُ الذِّكْرِ صحيح فإن هذا الأمة sorry, I lost my place. ومراد أن هذه sorry I said هذا إن هذه الأمة أهل الذكر صحيح فإن هذه الأمة أعلى من جميع الأمم السالفة. First of all says being أهل الذكر says that our ummah, our nation is more knowledgeable than the other nations, than the other religions that came. Because we have Quran, we have other knowledges that we have. Two, we say that إذا كانت, for example, then yes, وعلماء أهل البيت الرسول عليهم السلام الرحمة من خير العلماء. And then Ibn Kathir then says that the scholars from Ahlul Bayt al-Rasul are the most knowledgeable, are the best of the ulama. So we are better, our nation is better than the other nations, and the best of our nation, Ibn Kathir says, is the best of them are the ulama of Ahlul Bayt. إذ كانوا على السنة المستقيمة, because we have, for example, they have Ali alayhi salam, he mentions Ibn Abbas, وابن علي الحسن والحسين ومحمد الحنفية وعلي بن الحسين زين العابدين وعلي بن عبد الله بن عباس وأبي جعفر الباقر وهو محمد بن علي بن الحسين وجعفر ابنه. It says because they have this, they have Imam al-Sadiq, because we have Imam Baqir, we have Imam Zain al-Abidin, we have Imam Hussein, we have Imam Hassan, Imam Ali. So even Ibn Kathir, who is from the Mufassirin of the Wahhabiyya or Salafiyya, they quote him the most. He even gives proof that when Ahlul Bayt say, we are Ahlul Dhikr, and ask them, it means that they are the best. They are Khairul Ulama, they are the best. So therefore a question arises as one, why do you not then narrate from them? You say, Fas'alu Ahlul Dhikr. Why don't you ask from them? Why don't you have narrations for them? In kuntum la ta'lamun. If you do not know, you should go and ask them. Why didn't you go and get narrations from them? How many narrations in Bukhari is about from Imam Ali alayhi salam, from Imam Baqir alayhi salam, from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam? Where is Thaqalain, the other side of Quran, inside these books? How come we have thousands of narrations from Imam Baqir, Imam Sadiq, and we say it's Ahlul Dhikr? And if you look at about it and you think about it, this is where you're supposed to get your deen from. Because you're supposed to ask, I want to know where the correct beliefs are, where the correct ahkam is, or obligations, where I can learn akhlaq from. All of deen. I should ask Ahlul Dhikr if I do not know. Why come in your sources you do not have them? And you have a few very, very limited sources. So therefore we come to the conclusion that the main difference when we see about the path of imamat and the path of khilafat is they say actually they have the narrations in Tafsir Qurtubi or Tabari, for example, or Ibn Kathir even mentions why. He even says, yes, it's true, but this is why, because they're the best. If they're the best and you say they're the best, then why aren't they in their books? Why didn't you get your religion from them? Why do you even have another madhab besides Imam Ja'far Sadiq? If you say here the Khairul Ulama, then why isn't your madhab Ja'fari, for example? So we see that this, or a verse of Quran, and some of our scholars bring about 20 few hadith, the fact that Ahlul Dhikr means Ali ibn Abi Talib. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, ali Muhammad wa ajil farajahum. So therefore, fas'alu ahla dhikr, and they were the only individuals to say, ask me before you lose me. They're the only individuals that can say this. Everyone else, I do not know, I do not know, I do not know. They would be stumped with sometimes easy questions or medium questions, but the only individuals that would say, ask me before I separate, you're separated from me or you lose me, are Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. So we had a very limited in history time to learn from Imams. And we have to thank Allah this Shahr Ramadan, the fact that our religion is back from Ahlul Dhikr or Ahlul Quran, because they understand the Quran. And nobody can ever say that any of their scholars or ulama know more than Ahlul Bayt. And this is according to Ibn Kathir. This is according to Qurtubi, according to Tabari, for example. So therefore you see many different narrations about Ahlul Dhikr, which is Ali alayhi salam, and therefore we see that, let's see here, yes, Ahlul, that's what I want to mention there. But what this means for us is that we have to develop our connection when we read Quran. We have to develop this connection that we have to ask Imams, because the Imams have bayan and explanation of Quran. Even if you say, or you understand the context of the Quran from another verse, but still at the end you have to look at the meaning of the Quran from what Ahlul Bayt have defined for us. Not only just to do tafsir of Quran, but Quran without Ahlul Bayt. That's what the second Khalifa did. That's what Ibn Taymiyyah did. Just Quran by Quran, without Ahlul Bayt. You can use context to understand everything. You can use verses of Quran for the context. But at the end, there's no true understanding of the Holy Quran and tafsir without the bayan, which is Imam Ali alayhi salam. How else would you know? For example, Ahlul Dhikr is Imam Ali. How else would you know? Tafsir Quran by Quran. You just go verse. How else would you know? Unless you had hadith that Imam Ali says, I am Ahlul Dhikr. Then that changes everything. That changes everything in the meaning. So therefore, we are in dire need for bayan and explanation of the Quran. We're in dire need of explanation of our beliefs, of our actions by Ahlul Bayt. And where is this found? In hadith. So unfortunately, there is this movement or this devaluing of hadith and narrations inside some of the Muslim community, that they want to repeat the slogan that Hasbunallah, sufficient for us, Hasbuna Kitabullah, sufficient for us is the Book of God. That you have to at the same time incorporate hadith and narrations, because they will give you the detail how to pray, how to fast. All these muftarat that we're doing right now, where are they from, most of them? These muftarat, for example, Shahr Ramadan, how to pray, how to perform Hajj, it is from the hadith. So you can never separate the bayan and explanation of the Holy Quran from Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, and you cannot separate deen from Rasulullah, from Imam Ali, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussein. And that is why, on the nights of Qadr, we do that dua that we put the Quran on our heads, and we have this a'mal, that you ask Allah while reciting the Quran, by Muhammad, by Ali, by Fatima, by Hassan, by Hussein alayhi salam. Because you want to be able to get your religion and nur and guidance from Kitab and Sunnah of the Prophet and his family, inshallah. So therefore, this for us is a wake-up call this for us is good instructions or guidance for us to never leave Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, and to take their hadith and their bayan seriously, inshallah. We ask Allah to never separate us from Quran and Itra, inshallah. We ask Allah to have mercy on our family members that have passed away and our dear friends that have passed away. We ask Allah to give shafa and a cure to all those that are sick. So Allah to accept our fast, accept our worship. And we thank Allah for allowing us to fast, allowing us to mention His name. May Allah expedite the return of Imam Zaman with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.